The 10th of June, 2022. So today is the 10th of June, 2022. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to like my official YouTube channel, and additionally to that, go to my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. So in reference to what I've already, in certain capacities, brought forward in regards of my book, the modern day book, if you go to my website, www.susanmealing.com, to the book section, you'll have the link there to go to Amazon to be capable to purchase that. So in that reference, in conjunction to finding a silver lining, I have brought forward quite a few important topics. And in my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com, I refer to several situations, especially during the updating portion, from the time frame of the year 2019 into now. This is the year 2022. So those people that I once knew in person, face-to-face in person, that had told lies, in my opinion, as to various factors in those hypotheticals as to the modern day book, as well as finding a silver lining. Those particular situations, such as where I had explained I was born and raised in New Jersey, and anybody who has actual intelligence would know that the botany, or the plant life, for those who don't know the word botany, the plant life in New Jersey is similar to the plant life in Washington State. Now, I've told people in reference to my nightmare from second grade, where I saw certain things such as 1993 in the World Trade Center, as well as 9/11 regarding 11 September 2001, and I had done things to prevent it from being as bad as it could have been. So those particular factors as to individuals that I've also explained in person, face-to-face in person, as well as through writing as to that, in reference to when I was in Washington State regarding Vancouver, it was a bit confusing to me, having been born and raised in New Jersey and grew up going around the tri-state area, the spirits that I have seen before in regards to such as the Revolutionary War, in comparison to the confusion regarding a spirit that I had seen, that I had actually informed the apartment complex that I was staying at with my son after how he and I wound up in Washington State after the Stoney LaRue concert at Cowboys Dance Hall in March of 2013, which again, I've gone over these details before, had started screaming about Nottingham. And so I made these attempts as best as I could while dealing with these other factors, such as the same botany in Washington State as in the state of New Jersey, New York State, and Pennsylvania State. But instead of anybody having common sense or intelligence, in my opinion, because of how things have been since that point in time, there hasn't been any actual assistance in the correct capacities, even to this day. So yesterday, the 9th of June, 2022, there was the reference as to the attacks on the 6th of January in 2021. And so while I had been in the area, I had shown up early because I've been working on my memories as far as Other factors, because I've already gone over those particular details, those particular failures, hypothetically, such as my biological mother, biological father, and or biological sister, that abomination of a family as to the abomination of a wedding, that my biological little sister as to the whore of abominations, in my opinion. I am an ordained reverend, by the way, and I've been an ordained reverend since the time frame of 2004 or 2005. I'm a confirmed member of Presbyterian Church USA since the year of 1997, and I attended a Catholic high school during the exact time of going through my confirmation class. By the way, that confirmation class was from 1996 into 1997, and there were a lot of minimal requirements, such as a minimum of 50 volunteer hours for that time frame. And then there were the grade requirements. And so the additional aspects were 2 electives. We had multiple quizzes and tests throughout the year, and then we had a final exam. So, in this particular reference, I had explained as best as I could, because of the complexities as to, similarly but not the same, of course, as to the 6th of January 2021, I had made these attempts in the year, well, many years, though in the years of 2019, 2020, and 2021 into this year of 2022, as to explaining these situations, such as through my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydoribelt.com. So one of these examples that I can give is in reference to when I was volunteering at Club Sapphire in the Seattle area of Washington, after this point in time that I'll get to as far as that reference is concerned, where I was dealing with these electrical situations. And I had told people I woke up from my coma after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, where I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain that took 8.5 years to dissipate out from the MRI and CAT scan views. And so these particular situations where I had also explained this, not just in person, face-to-face in person, though also in addition in writing, such as Finding a Silver Lining, as well as the modern day book, these situations, including in reference to the Ornery PSA, were a bit painful for me, physically painful. My hairstyle, which you can see the video footage from the time frame of 2019, 2020, and 2021 until I could finally deal with the levels of pain lowering enough so that way I could actually grow my hair out, as well as the fact as to the sides of my head regarding the hair here and here, touching my eyeglasses and sunglasses and not dealing with the additional pain from. Now, those people, such as my biological little sister, and the abomination of a marriage, as to the whore of abominations regarding my opinion, to the Miller family in regards of the state of Texas, as to the irony of irony, I knew a guy who knew a guy who had been a part of the TV show Invader Zim, and then there was the Invader situation in regards to the 6th of January 2021, the 9th of June 2022 to the first hearing that was publicized. So this particular aspect as to the irony of irony, I'm sure that Zach Miller, as far as how much he would say, I feel, and so then you have literally the starting point of ZIM. And so I can make that joke, and look, I made a pop culture reference. However, in that particular reference as to that whore of abominations with the mother of whore of abominations, as far as that wedding is concerned, regarding my biological little sister, as to what I actually had warned her about in quite a few capacities, though I'm sure those particular distracted by shiny object situations, in my opinion, I don't want to assume. Not Nonetheless, in those particular references as to how it would be common sense in comparison to the lack of common sense as to this hypothetical regarding those people as to their failures because they didn't know me in person, face to face in person, and if they did, it would have to be in truth. So that's a requirement. Now, while I would be in truth, that would be the requirement of them to additionally be in truth. Otherwise, if they themselves are not in truth, well, then what does that translate to for this particular sermon, monologue, lecture situation, other than they would not be in truth? So for that shortened, condensed aspect, that would translate to being that they would be lying, obviously. And in this modern era, in reference to the amount of technological advances such as the merger that occurred on the 6th of June 2022, those people, if anybody, should obviously know better, since the saying in Texas is God bless Texas. Though the saying that's also in the state of Texas is bless your heart, so I suppose it depends on what you view as blessings. When I say blessings, I actually mean genuine blessings. That's the translation, is genuine blessings, in comparison to what I had to take several years to learn as to what the Texas and Southern Midwest version is to blessings in their opinion for themselves. I don't view it that way because of how I personally am. And so in this hypothetical as to those individuals not having been outside the state of Texas, because you have the reference as to Exit 200 regarding Starbucks and how Zach Miller and my biological little sister somehow, even though they went to college, this is what you have for the modern time frame as to the lack of intelligence. So there's been all these advances in technology, and these people didn't have the common sense to actually think, or if they did, this is how lazy they were. They thought that halfway from San Marcos, Texas, and Carrollton, Texas, on I-35 was Exit 200. For those of you who need to know, Exit 200 is the Starbucks location that went to, that was across the highway as to the prime outlets in the town of San Marcos. So anybody who can have common sense possibly might not need to, though, because of the size of the state of Texas. The difference between the DFW area and San Marcos, Texas, these people actually thought that their intellect was to the halfway point at Exit 200. So while I had the common sense to look up the difference and didn't want to stir up needless drama because my biological little sister was marrying some individual that I hadn't ever had the displeasure of meeting beforehand as to that point in time, and that little temper tantrum as to his hat and his little sunglasses, as far as that millennial temper tantrum as to his feelings in those particular references, and those individuals who would know that individual and those people, they would be capable to clarify whether or not that's a commonality for those types as to those people, as to what they think is the key word, they think what a halfway point is. However, because of the fact that I have courtesy, and because of my biological little sister getting married into that whore of abominations of a whore of a wedding of abominations, in my opinion, I could take the time because I actually cared at that point. That was when I had cared about. However, since situations have been as they have been in this hypothetical, well, I do have care. I've always had care about myself, about my son, about my daughter, and about my family, which would be my son and my daughter and I. In those references, yes, my biological little sister, it was a second chance that she had to not be the same way that she was when we were children growing up in New Jersey. Although I guess technically it would be a third chance in those particular references because There's the time frame in New Jersey, and then there's the time frame in Illinois. And so that third chance in that particular reference, because I have that type of patience level. And so in this particular hypothetical, as the ignorance, because of the aspects as to those who have no capability to actually understand, because what knowledge would they actually have in reference to the capability of seeing and distinguishing spirits? Of course, somebody screaming Nottingham, though not being in the clothing or attire or uniforms as to what I'm accustomed to have seen in the state of New Jersey, where people were talking about Britain as far as the spirit aspect, anybody who has actual common sense wouldn't need that explained to them. Somebody who would actually have the mental health awareness wouldn't actually need that explained to them in that detail. Somebody who would have that intellectual capacity above substandard wouldn't need that explained to them if they actually had the capacity of that background. Now, if they don't have that background, such as in this hypothetical as to those people, well, then they would have to have common sense to actually ask the one and only person to ask. Similarly to my scuba diving, there's only one person to have asked. However, in the references to such as Florida and my scuba diving trip out there, if those people were substandard in common sense in this hypothetical, then they would take a look at the pictures that I had taken regarding my son and my daughter, though I guess they don't have cognitive awareness, because there are pictures of my son and my daughter wearing goggles and preschool age type, elementary school age type fins in comparison to scuba fins, okay? And they would be capable, if they had intelligence, to see that my niece wasn't doing that. She didn't have that on her face. So if they had, above substandard common sense, they would be capable to distinguish the difference. However, again, if I had to explain that today, the 10th of June, 2022, and or in any of the other prior official YouTube videos of mine, do make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel. And thank you. I do appreciate positive support in that capacity. So if they actually, same thing for those civilian, recreational, lazy scuba divers, if they could not put that together because of their cognitive dissonance in comparison to cognitive disorders, because obviously somebody who took a few years of Latin would be capable to distinguish the difference as to the verbiage and the importance of such. So the cognitive disorder, okay, fine, I can acknowledge that I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 when I was in basic training for the Army. In comparison to cognitive dissonance, though I suppose if you are into word aspects, the distance as to their cognitive dissonance compared to my cognitive disorder would probably be the equivalent of the halfway point between San Marcos, Texas, where they were, and Carrollton, Texas, where I was. So in those particular references as to those hypotheticals of that lack of common sense or substandard common sense, if that actually needed to be brought forward, well, here you go. It's the day after the first trial that would be televised as to the 6th of January 2021 events at Washington, D.C. Now, in reference as to how those people simply should have just asked the one and only person, it was brought up in regards to the 9th of June 2022 court hearing that people like to wish to utilize the Fifth Amendment. And so anybody who's ever held me to a standard of whatever that would be, in turn, that should be the exact same standards that they should be held to. Because obviously common sense would dictate that, especially if anybody has ever notice the level of what could be considered as accomplishments. And so in those particular hypotheticals, as to any needless problems, such as during the time frame of my updates in the year of 2019, 2020, and 2021 into this year of 2022, to my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com, they obviously should be willing, capable, and able to do so to the exact same standards that I was held to. Obviously, because of them being Democrats and the way Democrats bring forward, now I'm a Republican or conservative or an independent in that capacity. However, since those individuals had fought for that, socialized healthcare as per those standards, that would be as to all those people who were supposedly so proud to vote for 44 regarding Barack Obama, which I supported the office of and did my work, such as my scuba diving, where I earned my 26 scuba diving certifications and handled all the stuff that I handled. And so again, that would require actually speaking with me. However, if those people similarly as to the time frame regarding the spirit that I had seen, that I had emailed quite a few aspects in that, and so if their cognitive dissonance would be so far away in comparison of San Marcos to Carrollton, Texas, literally for the viewpoint of Texas and San Marcos all the way to Vancouver, Washington, as to their level of cognitive dissonance, well, then obviously in that hypothetical, that would require certain other factors, because with that lack of intellectual level, what could they ever do in regards of raising any children? Right? So in that hypothetical, as to any needless problems regarding those particular factors, as to I shouldn't have to explain the difference between the botany of, because anybody who would have not been in the state of Texas, who could see the differences to the plant life or the botany in Vancouver, Washington, compared to New Jersey and New York State and Pennsylvania, the common sense would not have to be explained as to how that would be confusing, having explained to people throughout the years in person, face-to-face in person, especially in the state of Texas, from the time frame of 2000 to 2012, though also randomly in 2019 through 2021, as to having seen spirits similarly in reference to the years of 1998 to the year of 2000 in the state of Illinois, having explained that to those people, as well as having explained that in the state of New Jersey in the 1980s and 1990s, having seen spirits. So anybody who has common sense and intellect to be capable to know that I went to Old Tennant Presbyterian Church. Old Tennant Presbyterian Church was utilized as a hospital during the Revolutionary War. The Battle of Monmouth was when you face the back of the church, where you could see General George Washington's private office, to what would be the equivalent of if the church was considered to be midnight or 12 on an analog clock. At about the 10 to 11 area would be where the Battle of Monmouth would be, towards the edge of the property to Old Tennant Presbyterian Church. And anybody who would not have cognitive dissonance would actually not need the explanation as to the spirit reference in regards of Washington State screaming Nottingham. And anybody who has any geography regarding any type of education or the capability of looking at a Google map would be capable to know for a fact that Nottingham is in Britain. And so in that particular reference, it wouldn't need to be actual high standard levels of common sense in those particular references to see that Well, in the spirit wearing a different type of uniform, that would not be considered what the British were wearing in regards up to the spirits that I saw out in the state of New Jersey and the state of New York. Obviously, for anybody who has any history in their background to having learned that, those particular uniforms are quite different. Their head covers are different. Their actual jackets are different. The way their pants fit, additionally, are different. And their shoes are different. So if you haven't seen spirits in that capacity, well, I'm sure you have historical references as to what the uniforms would be during the Revolutionary War of the British that may or may not have been from Nottingham, England, and to the comparison of whatever green uniform with a circular hat that looks similar to a police officer law enforcement cover in those references, and then not necessarily BDU style fitting as to the uniform compared to British uniforms regarding the Revolutionary War, that particular set of situations, which again, I had emailed the multitude of individuals in the Vancouver, Washington area, because I haven't seen a spirit that fresh since, well, before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. And so while, yes, I saw the spirits and could distinguish the spirits as to the Revolutionary War, as to distinguishing the spirits as to a more modern time frame depending on, I don't know what other people have as far as those particular references in those regards as to mediumship and or clairvoyance, clairsentience, whatever wording, it really doesn't matter to me. That matters more to other people in comparison to myself. And so in this particular reference in the year of 2013, upon moving into that apartment complex in the year 2014, and then in addition to my issues regarding the electrical stuff, because I had warned people specifically in the state of Texas in the overall area, though especially in the civilian recreational scuba diver sector, if I had ever been above the area of the Mason-Dixon line and was not in the state of New Jersey first, you have situations that need to be taken care of, and it's an emergency. And so in reference to Washington State compared to, I know there's Washington, D.C., such as the reference to the 6th of January, 2021. However, those two letters, D.C., are not in Washington State. They're in Washington, D.C. And so there's two different coastlines. Washington State is off of the West Coast, and Washington, D.C. is off of the East Coast. Again, geography. So in that particular reference, if any individual that I once knew in person, face-to-face, in person, and or has been following around regarding my website, www.susanmuling.com, which is the same as www.ladydoribell.com, if it has been in positive support, well, I do appreciate it. If it has been in a negative aspect, well, I suppose, what is your negative viewpoint now? Because if I actually needed to actually bring that particular detail forward, despite already having done so well before the year of 2019, 2020, and 2021, I have had the knowledge of that. I obviously don't have to go look it up. So in those particular references as to those factors, any hypothetical into any individual that I once knew in person, face-to-face, in person, to those types of lower level intellectual levels, educational backgrounds, experiences, what have you as far as that's concerned. I don't personally know what those issues would be for their mental health awareness. though I already brought it forward, and anyone with actual common sense would not have needed me to actually bring that forward in that reference, because it's already been gone over literally in the year 2013 and 2014. So in this reference as to Nottingham, Britain, in the state of Washington, and the very distinctive difference between that outfit compared to the British Revolutionary War outfits as far as those spirits, well, with the backgrounds being similar to the botany, I wouldn't think that you'd need to be a rocket scientist to be capable to figure that out. However, maybe you do. I don't know. Then again, I'm not a rocket scientist. I just created the underwater travel system, as well as a few other things. I authored and compiled a few books. I created my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. I created my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, and I authored my books that I published through Amazon for my profit to do as I chose to do and choose to do with it in comparison. So similar to how I designed my house in reference to what was my home in the area of Carrollton, Texas, and similar to how I've known what to do that would be best for my son and my daughter, despite how I had been pregnant with my son and my daughter 1 and 2 years after waking up from my coma after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, where I delivered them after that head injury and coma while having that subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain, and while taking care of all those other factors at the time frame of. Now, it would have been great to actually have assistance in the correct ways, and what assistance I have had, I am grateful for. However, in reference to those individuals, well, I don't know whether it's a positive or a negative if they actually need to have more assistance than I, especially when you take in consideration. So if they actually need more assistance than I to get things correct, if they can, in those references, I suppose it depends on the viewpoint regarding that. So, in reference to that particular factor, no, I don't know who the individual, as far as screaming Nottingham, would be. Hadn't met that spirit before, hadn't seen anything remotely close to that spirit before or since in regards of the year of 2013 and 2014. Any individual as to Vancouver, Washington, and or Portland, Oregon, that would have the knowledge as to those particular factors, you can take that in consideration. And he was infuriated, just so you know. He was screaming and enraged as to those particular situations. So in comparison to what hypotheticals as to the time frame of my updates to my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com, I did make attempts to explain and do the updates, such as when I was a child growing up, most specifically in the state of New Jersey, going out to the shoreline in reference to the Atlantic area, the ocean. Well, where the location of the oceanic waters compared to where I was born and raised, it was a bit confusing, because while yes, for those who would have the geographical reference, the oceanic waters are still just the oceanic waters. Anybody who knows anything about the currents knows that the oceanic waters go around the earth and throughout the earth. So unless having a geographical map to look at in comparison to the way I grew up in regards of the oceanic waters, Well, okay, I knew I was going out from New Jersey or New York to the area of the oceanic waters. Only till later did I learn that that was called the Atlantic area. So later, in reference to the geographical map as to what's considered the Pacific, well, if you didn't know, the Atlantic area of the oceanic waters and the Pacific area of the oceanic waters have this thing in common. A few, okay? One thing that they have in common is the oceanic waters. Yeah, surprise. But probably not. Another thing that they have in common is there's salt in the waters. Yes, yes, yes. In those areas, both the Atlantic area of the oceanic waters and the Pacific area of the oceanic waters, there's salt in the water. Surprise. That's why it's called oceanic waters in comparison to freshwater, because freshwater wouldn't have salt in it. Obviously. And you can't really drink salt water. It's not healthy for you, obviously. Freshwater, yes, you can drink that in comparison. Duh. So in those references, when you have salt in the water compared to fresh water, that's important to take in consideration. So there would be certain similarities energetically as well. However, in regards of my grandpa Gavin and a few other factors, this is so very true. In regards of my journal blog updates, the Ornery PSA, as well as my official YouTube channel, please do subscribe. Encourage others to subscribe to my official YouTube channel. So I brought up some individuals who would attend Old Tennant Presbyterian Church at random, okay? They usually wore black suits with these white button-down shirts and these black ties, and they usually had a fedora with them. They had a specific type of shoe that they wore, and depending on certain other factors, there's a whole bunch of details in these particular references. But that was back in the 1980s and 1990s compared to now. They also had specific types of handkerchiefs and so on and so forth. There's a whole bunch of stuff in those references. And so in comparison, though, where we would discuss certain things that I dealt with and handled during the time, or if they had certain things that they had questions about in reference to, similarly along the same lines as to the backyard, irony of irony, backyard in the house area of New Jersey that I grew up. Well, there's the backyard of my house in San Antonio as to the year of 2004 in regards of those who know about the oak leaf reference. And then you have the backyard as to what was my home in regards of Carrollton, Texas, as to what I had explained was a fairy ring, among a few other situations, as to those references. Just as a few, of course, then there's Irving 2011. There's some pictures that I've taken in film as well as digital regarding on land, most specifically, or while I was on land, but taking pictures out towards the sky. So, in addition to that, then you also can take in consideration as to if there's anything such as the similarities to, there's also Indiana 1999. And so those particular situations as to these factors, I don't know what happened in reference to any, I'm sure there are similarities to the East Coast and the Atlantic areas of the oceanic waters as to certain situations that I dealt with during those years of the 1980s and 1990s, and then the situations regarding not necessarily when I went scuba diving, more along the lines of swimming. There would be the year of 2003, 2005, and then the year of 2011. For those particular references as to the Gulf of Mexico area of the oceanic waters in reference to what had to be taken care of then. Apparently there was a situation I had to handle in the year of 2011. I don't know what occurred between the time frame of 2009 and 2010, but business had to be handled and some regulating had to occur for certain factors. So anyway, in those references, then there's the situations and how that regulating occurred is how that regulating occurred. It is what it is as far as those situations. So, you know, you're welcome, state of Texas, apparently. And so, despite how certain things went in other references. And so then in regards of some video footage that I took during the time frame of being on a ferry in regards of Washington State, I think it would be the year of 2015 or 2016. Well, that's a smidgen different than what I'm accustomed to dealing with in regards of, so I don't know in regards of whatever hypotheticals that would be similar to New Jersey. And well, I guess by technicalities, maybe there's some similarities regarding the USNS General Hoyt S. Vandenberg in that particular factor, though in a different way. I apologize, I don't have the words in those references. I only have the metaphors to assist with. So in regards of, I don't know if there's ever been anything that occurred where maybe Lake Irving, though they, instead of flying, they landed. Nonetheless, if so, I took video footage and, you know, there was the tablet as far as that was concerned. I've written about that in regards of not only the updates to my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, through my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydoribell.com. I've also got my official YouTube channel. Share the links and like the links of my official YouTube videos. I have my Instagram account where I do what I can, and those references. There are the film pictures that I once took many years ago. I don't have those anymore because of what occurred in the year of 2019 after the year 2018 because of, well, then there's my Medal of Honor art project trips as far as that's concerned, and what would have actually been best would to actually ask me what would be best in comparison. Similarly, if you wanted to know and had actual questions in reference to my scuba diving back in the years of 2009 into 2010, well, what would have been best would be to ask me. And I do have that reference as to, yes, I know I didn't become a scuba dive instructor. I earned more scuba diving certifications than any scuba dive instructor minimum requirements, as well as I accomplished more successful and obviously safe scuba dives between the time frame of March of 2009 through May 2009 to that requirement as to the minimum hours of scuba diving in reference to a scuba dive instructor, though again, I earned far more scuba diving certifications per requirement for a civilian recreational scuba dive instructor, though those individuals would have to have the mental clarity to actually tell the truth about that in that hypothetical. If they did not, that would be something in regards of scuba dive law enforcement, which I did tell people in the year 2009, after August of 2009, that no matter what, they would either assist in the correct and positive ways through working with me to that scuba diving law enforcement, or if they chose to try to avert it, they were not going to like how scuba diving law enforcement or scuba diving police was going to become because of their choices. So they had the option in the month of August 2009, September 2009, October 2009, November 2009, and January of 2010, February of 2010, and March of 2010 to speak with me as to the creation of scuba diving law enforcement or scuba diving police, because if they chose not to, they were not going to like the way the people who do not go scuba diving would do scuba diving police and scuba diving law enforcement. However, their choices were as their choices were. I had also made attempts in reference to scuba diving, not necessarily law enforcement, not necessarily police, though assistance, because of an individual who decided not to listen to my warnings as far as going out to the Gulf of Mexico in reference to Cozumel. And then he decided, well, he didn't really decide to catch a poofy fish. I don't know if he played football when he was younger, because it was just natural that he did that in comparison. And so I don't know if it was muscle memory or not. However, I had to do a whole bunch of extra work because of that little poofy fish. And so, not that I wasn't already taking care of a bunch of other work. Anyway, so it is as it is. Nonetheless, it is what it is. I had enough to take care of. I made attempts in reference to the civilian recreational scuba diving sector at that point in time, from June into August, or June into July, June of 2009 into July of 2009, before going to my trip in August of 2009 to the Florida area. However, those civilian recreational lazy scuba divers in reference to Carrollton, Texas, and the others as to those particular scuba diving locations made the choices that they had in comparison to what I informed them would be most ideal. And so since they wanted to do things their way in comparison to what I had informed them, we needed to actually discuss in person, face-to-face in person, and if they actually knew people, that would translate to I would actually have to speak with in person, face-to-face in person. However, as to my 3-volume book series in regards of the adventures of Susan Mealing, Scuba Diver Extraordinaire, which is through Amazon, on my website, the book section is to the link regarding my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydoribelle.com, as to what I explained that I had dealt with, similarly as to my updates, in regards of the ornery PSA on my website, www.susanmealing.com. So, in those references as to the time frame of the year 2009, again, this is the year 2022, and so having listened and paid attention in a different capacity, though a similar capacity, as to the 9th of June 2022 regarding the 6th of January in 2021, I suppose I'm similar to the second individual who had testified in the courtroom area, because I had shown up several days early. I went around the various areas. I also was working on, in reference to my memories from before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, because obviously after the situations, especially if there was any failure regarding people I once knew in person, face-to-face in person, as to telling the truth, because you would need to tell the truth, especially in those references as to those time frames, as I've already put in writing and official YouTube videos of mine. I did stop by the NSA. I did stop by, well, I don't know if I found the CIA or not. I'm not certain. I found a building, and then there were cars that went by back and forth. So I was in a parking, I can make fun of myself for this. So I find this building, right? And so I find, and it's got this little parking lot. And I see these cars randomly, shoo, 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 shoo. And I'm looking around. I'm not getting out of my car because at the time frame of I was going to come back later at that time frame because I just wanted to make sure I knew where I was going. However, I see these cars, shoo, 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 and I'm looking at the stuff in my car and it's like, is this the CIA? Is this where this is? I don't see a sign that says CIA. Is there a sign? And then these cars, zoom, zoom, zoom. Where's the sign that says CIA? Is there a sign somewhere? Where is the shoo, shoo, shoo? Is there a sign? I'm not getting out of my car at night. If I am at the correct location, I think that would be intelligent, by the way, in my defense. So, you know, is there, these are thoughts, I didn't say this out loud. Is there a sign somewhere that says CIA? Did I miss the sign? I can make fun of myself, by the way, obviously. Is there somewhere? See here, CIA, CIA, CIA sign. Hello. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Hello. Here, CIA, CIA, CIA sign. Hello. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Although it would be funny if that actually was. And in the car, I'm just thinking, you know, I am so, how am I missing this? Where is the CIA sign? Do they have a sign? Shoo, shoo, shoo. You know, this would probably be a smidgen easier. If there was a sign, like CIA, that'd be great. No, shoo, shoo, these guys going by. You know, I'm just gonna go to the NSA tomorrow. What am I missing? I mean, I'm sure I'm missing quite a bit. I can acknowledge that, but okay, come on. Hello? 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 Ollie, accent free. Ollie, accent free. I do like Colonel Oliver North. Ollie, accent free. Hello? Although it is funny because my scuba diving in the year 2009, so there's Ollie, you know, Colonel Oliver North. And then those who know the Chinese zodiac, well, it was the year of the oxen. And I was freely roaming around to a degree around the United States of America. While looking for the CIA sign. Joke. Anyway, so yeah, and I didn't hide that when I returned back to the state of Texas in that year of 2019. Yeah, I didn't hide that. I was honest. And then I stopped by the FBI. Yeah, hey. A few locations, well, a few times. I said, okay, well, you know, you should probably tell the truth in 2019, especially. Yeah, 2021 and 2020 and onward, like 2022. They I don't know what other people know, but you know, they might. It'd probably be better. I don't know, like technically, I suppose that Fifth Amendment really, you know, in regards of, I guess, you know, in that particular ironies, you know. And then I can make a different joke. Okay. So, I had a dog, and then I had a few, but when I was a child, I had a dog named A, okay? I was short in reference to irony of ironies to the Navy called my dog AWOL. Okay. Ironies. So the reason why he was called AWOL was because he'd escape from Mrs. Hardwick's backyard. And he'd go hide in the swamp area, swimming around. He was a half collie, half husky. Swimming around and all that sort of stuff. And then the recruits at the Navy base nearby, they'd go march out there, go to do something, and then he'd come out of the swamp, all covered in the stuff, rah, rah. But he was a friendly dog. It's friendly. It's a half collie, half husky. So anybody who knows those particular breeds, he's just like, hey, what's going on? Well, apparently that scared the recruits. Anybody who knows how collie fur and husky fur are, well, he had all sorts of that stuff. So then, the instructors at a point in time, they kind of knew. And so they were like, it's okay, come here. So they called him AWOL, especially when they'd explain it to Mrs. Hardwick. Well, A became my dog because when I was 2 years old, I had pizza. And I had a pizza crust that I didn't feel like having, so I gave it to A. And then as a 2-year-old, I decided no. And I opened his mouth and I took the pizza crust out. And he was a good dog. He stayed right there. Good boy. And then I gave it back and it just became a whatever as far as I was concerned. That's how he became our dog. So in this joke, okay, it's not a joke because it's the truth. So instead of saying AWOL all the time, just called him A. There is an irony in reference to my biological mother and or my biological father in regards of Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment as to the paperwork that they signed. However, I was 12 years old at the time, and those people made the choices that they made. Hypothetically, that could be found if they have acknowledged that finally. And so that would be a different capacity because I'm still upset regarding, because I really wanted to attend because I was invited to Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment. Nonetheless, I was moved from New Jersey to Illinois. It's annoying. Nonetheless, so I could make the joke, okay? So there's the situation such as Irving 2011, okay? They probably use technology. And yet, okay, so, and this is a pun intended, okay? So my dog A is from my childhood. Well, then there's the NSA, and there is technically a letter A that would be considered as AWOL to NASA, to the NSA. I am this dork. Yes, I am. I'm this much of a dork. Yes. Hey. Nonetheless, and it's the truth. So, So, good news is there's still another A in regards of NSA. Obviously, but there's 2 A's in NASA. Similar, there's 2 E's in Neeling. Boom. Total funny. In my opinion, I'm a dork though, so. And SCUBA and Susan. It's not the same, though, Lady Dory. And C, that's kind of the only letter that's not in either one of the names. Boom. But you can see my modeling pictures as well as my official YouTube channel videos. Ooh, I have a really, really dorky sense of humor. I can acknowledge that. So anyway, in regards of out in Washington State area and Oregon State, to me it makes sense why that would be confusing. First and foremost, it's a different energetic type of water compared to, so the Pacific area of the oceanic waters different than the Atlantic area of the oceanic waters, other than the geography. And I don't know what differences as to certain aspects, although there could be certain similarities, though possibly certain differences regarding situations that I dealt with in regards of my backyard, and a few locations, and then the oceanic portions as to those factors. So there's that as a hypothetical. And then there's a few other situations. So I made the best attempts I could to explain that. So, in regards of, I acknowledged the truth, and anybody who would have common sense, probably wouldn't need to have that explanation as to Nottingham and Britain in regards of Washington State being confusing with the plants, such as the trees and the bushes and all that sort of stuff, compared to the East Coast. I would think it would be common sense because, the Revolutionary War, their uniforms were different. And so if I actually had to explain that, in regards of my updates, even though it's already, I'm just saying. So, there's that. So, thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel, like my official YouTube videos. You're going to leave a comment. Make sure to have etiquette and respect. Go to my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydoribelle.com. Go look around and stuff like that as far as my website's concerned. And make sure to have etiquette and respect, and share the link in regards of, journal blogs of mine on the Ornery PSA. My website, www.susanmealing.com, and the links in reference to my official YouTube channel. I appreciate as the stuff and know that it's a lot. I do. I've lived through it. I have, so that's why I can go through that. And so today is the 10th of June, 2022, and in conjunction to, hopefully it's actually uploaded now in regards of yesterday's official YouTube video that I had done what I could to actually have it upload a few hours before the proceedings, because I knew it would assist in regards of, I'll put the link if I could actually get that up there, in regards of in the section of information regarding this official YouTube video of mine, and you can see the conjunction aspect. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a good day, and today is the 10th of June 2022. The 10th of June, 2022.